It is the original Leviathan type hailing back from the days of Meteorot 4. It is LWT00 Mi-Leviathan, with a kit of Hold, Double Static, Sea Legs, and the leg ability of Rumbling, which grants a fight boost effect to self when charging Metaforce. Now, Mi-Leviathan is actually the very last of a series of 4 that we've been collecting as, ironically, also event rewards up to this point to complete the quartet. The other 3 models, of course, are Ku Wyvern, Ku Centaurus, and Chi Behemoth. And of course, having Mi-Leviathan here will finally finish out that set so that we can finally have all of them. Hold is a melee-based skill and an ailment at that when attacking the opponent will prevent them from dodging, if I recall correctly, but also debuff their heat and cool stat by about 25%, which means that from then forward until the ailment is removed, that particular target will be going just a little bit slower than it was before, making it much easier for a lot faster allies to outrun on your side and get the hit in. Right and left arm of static are rather unique shooting skills in the fact that they have no base damage, but instead deal fixed damage. Much akin to Pokemon's move Super Fang, when using static, it will cut the total remaining HP of the part taking the blow by 50%. So of course that means if they are at 100% HP when attacking, it is going to cut it down to 50%. And then half of that, and so on. The innate drawback to static, however, is that it itself is incapable of breaking parts, which means it is only good for setting up allies to come behind him and finish the job easier, instead of actually being a dedicated damage dealer. Sea Legs do also give this Leviathan type, rather fittingly, modest coverage across most terrains, but also with a pretty solid and pretty good emphasis on evade stats, much akin to standard Sea Legs. With armor across the board too is actually pretty modest too, especially I'd say upper tier for what he has to offer. With a head of about 3,900 HP, arms at about 3,200, legs at about 4,000, means he's going to take a pretty solid beating before he actually starts having things broken. Leg stats are pretty modest too across the board too. Evade of just shy of about mid 1600s at about 1659 is pretty nice. Mobility of 608 is kind of par for the course for sea-legged types though, but a heavy limit of 2 is really, really nice for these though. So even with the weakness of having rather low melee resist and an even lower shoot resist, which neither which are honestly all that great, the heavy limit does honestly kind of forgive it just a little bit, especially given the fact that Mi-Leviathan is an event reward and something that anyone can collect and anyone can farm. In addition to this, you might think at first glance the leg ability of Rumbling might be kind of misplaced, but let me kind of correct you on that and point back to one thing. His arms are not his primary source of damage. His arms are only there as setups to his main form, which is his head, which is a melee-based skill. Now, even though he only has 3 charges of this, well-timed can actually make the most of this pretty well across the board. As a pure set score, I do honestly have to rate Mi-Leviathan a pretty solid 6 out of 10. Doesn't really have a lot of negative traits for the most part, or anything that would consider it potentially dooming in this case, but doesn't really have a lot of big advantages either, aside from mostly being designed as a setup-based character more than an actual and dedicated damage dealer. As mixed parts, on the other hand, I do have to rate it much higher at about a 6.5 out of 10. Some cases could probably be made for a 7 depending on how you use them, primarily given the fact that we're not only going to be given static for free as an event reward, but it is a very solid shooting skill to make use of, especially as a setup skill. So say if you're going against someone who uses a lot of shields or a lot of damage reduction, the static is basically a free attack that allows it to ignore all of that outright and entirely, which means even just one use of static on a part guarantees that within 1 or 2 turns, it's going to be broken without a doubt, even if the drawback to using static is no defend and no evade until you finish your cooldown.